Alright, there we go. I just need this. Oh, I am not emotionally ready for this. I have no idea what's about to come, but I'm not ready for it. Nope. Brain's doing anything it can to not continue. Huh, I can't hear anything. It's doing the thing again. It's doing the thing again! Check. Weird. 6 days passed, the weather in that time sunny and clear. I'm supposed to be getting... Oh, there we go. Oh. Fuck you. No. A Tale of the Star. This song made it onto my playlist. A lot of the soundtrack made it onto my playlist. It first came to Sojiro's attention when he was resting with Alice after spending all day cleaning.
Sojiro,
you're off work today, right, Sojiro? Aoko asked him in her usual manner immediately upon entering the drawing room. It was already nighttime, approaching 9 o'clock. The afternoon's sunny weather had changed abruptly, and thick clouds were visible out the window. Awoken from his nonchalant daydreaming, Sojiro tilted his head to the side and replied calmly, I'm off today. But why do you ask? I'm making a trip home in a bit, so get your things ready. Sojiro's peaceful expression had grown tense the moment she appeared. Unsure of what any of this had to do with him, he stole a glance at Alice, who was seated across from him. However, she looked surprised as well, her eyes widening ever so slightly as she studied the other two. Why would you bring him along? I mean, huh? What things? He replied timidly, struggling to hide his bitterness at Aoko for waiting until the cleaning was finished before deciding to show up. Your things. Get them ready. It takes an hour to walk up the mountain, so make sure you dress accordingly. Oh, she brought back the sleigh outfit! Fuck! Sojiro's expression only grew darker. The way she spoke made it sound like you're taking Shizuki with you. Alice spoke up before Sojiro himself could manage to say anything. Aoko brusquely asked if there was a problem. I don't even want to go. But they keep asking me to stop by, so I'm gonna make a brief visit. I just thought I'd bring Sojiro along since he's free. That's all. She stood tall as if challenging her roommate to oppose her decision. Alice's face was dour as she gazed back. Sojiro's irritation was obvious as well as he glared at Aoko. Of course, their unspoken objection had no effect on Aoko in the slightest. We're leaving at 9:30. Having said all she wanted, Aoko disappeared from the room once again. Alice and Sojiro could only sit in dumbfounded silence. Alice, is Aozaki's house very far from here? He stared at the clock as he spoke. There were only 10 minutes to go until 1/2 the hour. It's at the edge of Misaki City, 4 stops away by train, upon a small mountain. Though it's more like a hill by your standards, I'd imagine. Her expression had not changed, but her voice made it obvious she was in a poor mood. His complete obliviousness to the fact only showed how clueless he truly was. Gotcha. So, if we leave now, we won't be able to make it back until tomorrow. Yes. If you even make it back. Please don't kill him now of all times. You just brought him back to life. Each spoke to themselves as if there were no one else in the room. Come on, get in your throne. Those about to embark on a journey always feel a sense of dread, and he was no exception. Is Aozaki's place, like, haunted with ghosts? Alice did not say anything in response. All she did was raise her eyes from her teacup to stare wordlessly at him. What is it? What is it, Alice? His question caused her to suddenly avert her eyes. Something seemed off about her today. The minute hand on the clock was about to reach 30. Bothered as he was by Alice's odd behavior, Sojiro had no choice but to stand up from the sofa and take his leave. Well, see you later. Sojiro hurried through the drawing room. Alice kept staring at his back until he was gone. By the time he had changed in his room and returned to the foyer, Aoko was already waiting and ready to go. Furthermore, Alice was at her side, and they were in deep conversation. She abruptly ended their chat as soon as he descended the stairs. All right, let's head out. Keep an eye on things while we're gone, okay, Alice? She responded with a simple nod. There was a determination as Aoko's step as she strode to the door. Sojiro made to follow her as he donned his coat in the foyer. Hurry it up! Her words made him pick up his pace, but he stopped suddenly as if he had remembered something. He looked back at Alice as if to say that he had left the heater on in his room, or some other important matter. I'll be back as soon as I can, but try to stay awake this time while waiting for me, okay? Alice blinked in shock at his unexpected request. Aoko looked on with arms folded as Sojiro stood waiting for a response. Bewildered, Alice finally returned to the drawing room without uttering a single word. I appreciate the pan, because I thought they were leaving and I thought everything was wrong until I realized that was Alice's movements. Her only response had been the very smallest of nods. They were headed to Aki Koshiro train station. The night had grown late. It was nearly 11 o'clock. A train full of tourists went by in the opposite direction before the two finally arrived at the tiny station. The surrounding area was incredibly dark and quiet. In fact, it felt less like a station and more like a small boat dock. Sojiro had a hard time imagining that many people came here even during the day. It had only the absolute bare minimum necessary to greet the odd visitor. There were no convenience stores in sight, only fields at the streetlights that dotted the road. Aoko placed her ticket in front of the attendant, who sat sleeping in his chair and skimmed the train schedule. The last and only train back departed after midnight. Having confirmed her option, she headed hastily out of the station. The elderly station attendant was all alone. He had dozed off with both the heater and television still turned on. As he slept, his face looked completely content. The night felt vast in its darkness. The train station had been rendered obsolete now that cars were commonplace. It was like a lone star shining in the night sky. Sojiro thanked the attendant for his service before stepping out into the darkness. The man must have looked after the station for decades at this point, and would likely continue until the day he died. Outside the station, there was little in the way of human development. It would scarcely be called a village. There was not even an area out front for cars and buses to drop people off. Their eyes were met only with panorama of flat fields interlaced with lattice of footpaths. Oh, surely a sea of beautiful green in the summertime. During winter, it was more like a wasteland. However, electric lights felt strangely out of place, illuminated on one side of the dark vista. The cold only grew harsher as the night wore on. It relentlessly snatched all sensation from the fingertips. Aoko thus kept her hands in her pockets as she strode through the paths among the fields. She could feel the ground below through her shoes. Its softness was unlike that of the city, and for her it brought back countless memories. She had walked this path every day in middle school, after all. See the lights of the house in the middle of the mountain? That's my place. She pointed out a mountain that rose up before them with her finger. The journey looked like it would take about 40 minutes on foot. For now they remained among the rice fields, though their journey would continue beyond them. Aoko followed the path, bathed in light without looking back. The path seemed to hang before them like a pier leading out into the darkness of the ocean. The closer they got to the mountain, the darker it became. All signs of the hustle and bustle of human life were absent. The dark stillness made the moon overhead seem dazzling. Its light transformed the mountain path from blackness into mere shadow. Though dark, their surroundings were not totally discernible. The seemingly unending path stretched on and on. Sojiro, doing his best to match Aoko's pace, stole a momentary glance at the profile of her face. Did she not feel frightened in this quiet darkness, even with the moon to light the way? Her expression showed no outward signs of discomfort as she strode on in silence. In fact, this was how she always looked when she was trying to act tough. He had only a month's experience with her, but that much he knew. There was obviously something on her mind she couldn't ignore, no matter how small it might be. It's her feelings for him. Are you scared to be out here in the dark? No, I don't think that's it. She responded to his tentative question with a surprising nod. Really? This feels like the last type of place. I guess it is a barren place, but the city's honestly more terrifying at night than it is in the wilderness. Who wouldn't be scared of walking on these paths at night? All you can do is endure and ignore it. If you can't do either, then you really shouldn't be strolling around in the middle of the night. I see. So, why do you bring me? Didn't you hear what I said earlier? All this walking in the middle of nowhere is a waste of time. I wanted someone to talk to so it'd go by faster. Yeah, I guess you did say something like that. Sojiro fell into silence. He was not bothered by what she said. Rather, he was desperately searching for something to say in response. Their path through the night continued onward. Only the sound of their footsteps could be heard. Eventually, Aoko was unable to endure the silence any longer, despite her best efforts. Talk about something, Sojiro. But I don't have anything to talk about. He felt clueless and ashamed. He had been searching unsuccessfully for a topic throughout their awkward silence. I can barely hear myself over this. I love the music, but I can barely hear myself over this. Shocked though she was, Aoko let out a gentle sigh. At least for a moment, his simple earnestness was enough to make her forget all about her troubles. Don't be stupid. Make something up if you have to. It doesn't even have to be interesting. Anything will do. Her blunt retort was not entirely honest. She would surely scold him if he dared lie to her. Sojiro said as much, reminding her of how she had claimed to hate lies. Naturally, she did not bother responding. Damned either way, I guess. I don't have anything else to talk about, but there is something I wanted to ask. You said anything goes, right? A slight scowl crossed her face at his suggestion, but it lasted only a moment before she returned to her previous calm state. Alright, go ahead. I'll probably forget as soon as we're done anyway. She muttered her reply without making eye contact. Their destination in the mountains remained hidden from them, revealing not even a hint of its form. It had bothered him ever since that night. What was the truth behind it all? And how would the two sisters' drama unfold? Sojiro decided to press Aoko for details. So, what was it that Miss Toko wanted to accomplish? I thought I told you. She wanted to get revenge against me. And then there's the whole coming in contact with the root thing. We already talked about the swirl of the root, remember? It's like the source of magecraft, right? Right. And also, it's in Go. The place where all knowledge is recorded, and where all matters are settled. To see, touch, and understand. It makes even the impossible possible. It has gone by many names over the years, but you could say it's where God lives. God? So, there's just one then? Not a bunch like in Shinto? There you go again with your annoying questions. There are gods in everything around us, but there's also one big underlying force that existed way before all that. Who knows why an entrance to the root is located in Misaki, but my grandfather discovered it and was able to create a new kind of magic. But then he closed the way to the root. He said that if this path to God enabled us to create magic, then no one should be allowed to go there. He has no intention of opening it again as long as we're alive, which made Toko crazy mad. She said that the path is meant to be explored, even if we aren't strong enough to handle what we find, and that you shouldn't be studying magecraft in the first place if you're afraid of getting killed. But my grandfather didn't appreciate her ambition, which is why he removed her. He refused to allow anyone to investigate the root until a stronger heir was born. He's willing to pass on true magic, but just not the way to reach the root. I understand where Toko is coming from, but I agree with my grandfather. I don't care about the root in any way to this day. There haven't been any survivors. There's not even proof that it's really the seat of the gods. Her mood gradually soured as she spoke towards the end. It sounded more like a list of complaints. Despite her words, however, part of Aoko was unable to agree completely with her grandfather's decision. Sojiro took note and followed up with a question about something he found strange. What did you mean about how there haven't been any survivors? I meant that no one's ever come in contact with the root and returned to talk about it. Not a single person in the entire world. Coming in contact with it means instant death. The soul of a mere human simply returns to the source, so to speak. In other words, it gets sucked into the root. That's why not even the greatest mages in history dared to touch it. Just coming close is enough to send them frantically trying to stabilize their magecraft. Sojiro furrowed his brow at the oddness of it all. Then, how does anyone know so much about this place? Because there is one person who went and made it back. But you said there were no survivors. Yeah, because everyone who's gone in turns into God, too. She spoke very matter-of-factly, as if it was only a minor detail about something that had happened the other day. Why would they even bother coming back to our world? Or maybe they can't. Who knows? But being God is probably totally different than what we imagine. I doubt it's very fun. Whether they succeed or fail in their endeavor, those who reach the root become unable to return to the normal world. Maybe the first person to become God felt lonely and spread the word about the swirl of the root in order to have others join them there. Or maybe they had so much work to do as God, they just needed some help. None of it made any sense, no matter how long Sojiro thought about it. You think Miss Toko wanted to become a god? Oh, please. She just wanted to know the truth. She doesn't care what happens to the next person, just how she always been. She just focuses on completing her goal and doesn't worry about what comes next. She's a bit on the extreme side, to be honest. But geniuses always have an inhumane side to them like that. They work and work on their masterpiece without so much as considering what will happen once it's complete. Sojiro wasn't sure whether she spoke out of disgust or respect. But she's still pretty considerate to others in the moment. Since she doesn't worry about the future, she focuses all her energy on the here and now. Aoko praised her sister's genius, even while cursing her every being. Though her tone of voice was perfectly pleasant and lacked any audible animosity. Right. She does seem like she'd rather stay here. As soon as he spoke, he was struck by the meaning of Aoko's earlier words. I don't care about the root. He realized that she must feel the same way as Toko. Still, there was one thing that had been bothering Sojiro regarding Toko. What did you mean about turning her into a frog? He ventured into bringing up the topic no one had been talking about since it occurred. It had always seemed taboo to bring up, so the sense of transgression made him hesitate as he finally sought the truth. Exactly what it sounds like. Rune mages can shapeshift, so apparently that made her especially susceptible to the curse. That sounds like a bigger deal than you're making it out to be. His stomach hurt from the stress of not knowing how to respond to her cavalier attitude. I mean, how is it even possible to turn someone into a frog? He did not particularly want to ask, but it was the natural extension of his current line of inquiry. Aoko stared straight ahead as she lectured him, completely ignoring the pained expression on his face. So there are two ways to go about it, a mind swap, or a reconfiguration of the person's physical form. Swapping minds is easy, but the effects don't last long. It feels like you're dreaming, and then there's a little jolt when you return to your body. Changing someone's physical form is more tricky, and it's hard to revert back before the spell ends. I used a physical reconfiguration approach, I guess. Something about reconstructing the base DNA sequence. I don't know, it's all gibberish to me. You can't explain magecraft in scientific jargon in a way, right? Aoko spoke as if it were not her own actions she was discussing. Apparently she had been borrowing magecraft from her future self and could not use any of it in the present. Her actions had also created a looming threat that would come back to haunt them in 10 years' time. Trying to comprehend even a fraction of all the intricacies involved made Sojito's head hurt. But several years from now, you'll know how to do stuff like that? Pretty scary if you ask me. Sojito was being completely honest with her. In response, Aoko only stared ahead blankly, eyes wide open. She looked like she wanted to scold him. Physical reconfiguration would be no problem for Alice even now, you know? Wait. What? I said you should take her more seriously, remember? You really never listen. You know those dolls in her room? They're all that's left of people who opposed her. I don't know what looking dolls you're talking about. But that's not okay. What? Okay. More horrifying dolls. And these ones came from people. Surely Alice would never do something like that. That's exactly what I thought for the first 6 months or so. The light, cheerful laughter that followed only made her statement all the more chilling. That facial expression also makes it all the more horrifying. Why do you have this way of making a shiver go down my spine, Aoko? Thanks! It's not funny to joke like that, Aozaki. Do I look like I'm trying to make you laugh? She was clearly making fun of him at this point. Unable to determine how serious to take what she had said, Sojito's mood and expression only grew darker. And I grow more and more uncomfortable with you. Thanks! I love you, but no! No! I'm not here for the Annabelle bullshit! Fucking Jackie up in here! His obvious dejection made Aoko smile with satisfaction. She shouldn't be able to be a witch in the first place if she agrees with what you're saying. She gazed at him as they walked, her chest warm with emotion. The path they strode had shifted from footpaths through rice fields to a road climbing the mountain. It was surprisingly wide given the mountain's small size, though, with no shortage of trees on either side. The forest road led them up to the top of the mountain. Wheel marks were etched into the dirt underfoot. No doubt the Aozaki family came through here by car, and they're making them walk. The only light of the summit was that of the moon and stars overhead. The bald mountaintop lacked streetlights and houses as well as vegetation. Near the top of the incline, other path began to even out. The road ended abruptly at a house still a good way before them. It was too far to make out the shape of the building. But Sojito assumed it was Aozaki's house based on the warm light coming from the window. So, what should I do while we are busy with your family bonding time? Sojito had a hard time imagining Aoko engaging in any sort of family bonding time, but with effort. He could imagine that it must be a joyful time for her. He did not want to ruin that by intruding, which is why he brought up the subject now. If he had to, he would not have minded spending the night camping outside. Her reply was not what he had expected. You're going to meet my grandfather. He might be able to erase your memories of everything that's happened. She stopped dead in her tracks as she spoke. We're still going through with all this? Really? Girl, no, you brought him back to life. The frank and open attitude she had shown all night was now gone. Huh. Sojiro was too shocked to take another step forward. He turned back to look at her, having been walking a little ways ahead, and realized she was not joking. He stood still, taking in the glaring silence. Naturally, Aoko was the first to resume speaking. Nothing surprises you, does it? I thought after you brought him back to life that you'd let him just keep living, honestly. Not erase his memories. That's not okay. You out here saying that you want somebody that you could be like, hey, I'm a witch with, and you have him right in front of you. That's not okay. No. I'm surprised. Of course I am. And now I understand why you wanted to bring me along. I wasn't lying about wanting someone to talk to, though. It just so happens that my grandfather also told me to bring you to see him. Sojiro nodded in acceptance. He was as quiet and unchanging as the night around him. Aoko found it thoroughly irritating. Well, we should get going then. It gets cold when you stop moving. Sojiro? Ako's voice stopped him in the tracks, just as he was about to resume walking toward the household. Are you sure you're okay with this? If he erases your memory, it'll be like the whole month never happened. Sojiro murmured in understanding. The thought of returning to his old self and forgetting about Aoko, Alice, and the mansion altogether felt like giving up a treasure that he had discovered. But he didn't feel like he was unable to let go of them either. It would definitely be bad. It's been a fun month since I met you, and I just made that promise to Alice too. But it's not like you'll disappear. We'll still see each other at school once winter break's over, right? There was no answer from Aoko. She did not tell him that he was not the only one who would be losing their memory. Intervention by her grandfather would erase her own memories of Sojiro too. And you're choosing to go through with this? Honey, we need to have an intervention about what your choices are. Once it was done, they would most likely never even speak to one another again. Each would become just another random student at school. Even if they did happen to meet by some lucky circumstance, things would not be the same as they were now. She couldn't deny it. A small part of her was going to miss him too. Right. Let's get going. She rationalized her feelings away instead of processing them and set off once more toward the house. Sojiro followed along at her side. It was a matter of several minutes before they reached their destination. She was irritated to see that expression on his face looked exactly the same as it did. Forgetting their time together was sad for her, if only slightly slow, but it did not seem to bother him in the least. Guess you can't expect much sensitivity from someone who has no problem putting themselves in harm's way by breaking both his... Halfway through muttering her complaint, Aoko suddenly remembered, or rather, she realized something. Something about the one-time werewolf killer before her, and the mystery of who Sojiro Shizuki really was. The older version of herself that night had memories and knowledge of Sojiro beyond what she knew now. She knew something about this seemingly average boy's mistakes, why he was able to do what he did, and why he was raised in the mountains in the first place. She had always wondered, but never had a chance to ask him about it until now. Once her grandfather was through with them, all those questions she had about Sojiro would be gone too. There was no point in asking right before they had their memories erased, but then again, she might as well if she was going to forget everything anyway. This was her only chance to demand an explanation for his contradictory behavior. How about your contradictory behavior? Wait, there's one thing I wanted to ask you before this is all over. What was your life like when you lived in the mountains? What were you doing there? Her question stopped him on the spot. She had never seen him make such a pained expression. Why do you want to talk about something so boring? I already told you, I don't expect you to say anything interesting. I'm about to forget everything you say, so just humor me this once, okay? Her words and demanding gaze caused him to lift his head in surprise. You mean, you'll forget too? Of course. It would be pointless if I remember everything. We won't be able to make a clean break unless we both forget. It makes sense when you think about it. So quit looking at me like that. No, it doesn't make sense. You're both making dumb choices at this point. There is a point, in the beginning it made sense. It was a stupid plan B instead of plan A. But at this point, it's dumb. It's very clear this boy doesn't have any interest in spreading your information out. He clearly cares about you and you about him. So why are we going through with this? Sojiro's hand shot up to cover his mouth in response. His hand had no idea what kind of look he had been giving her, but he had a feeling it was pretty pathetic. So, we'll both forget. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. So, we won't see each other anymore. You never know, but most likely not. Thus, this would be their last conversation. The way she spoke made it so obvious. Even if he had been unaware of what awaited him, Sojiro might see her walk at the school and feel a desire to talk, but it would have no reason to interact. Even if he tried to strike up a conversation, he knew she was not the type to bother much with other people. More importantly, he was not the type to strike up conversation in the first place. Not the way he had been a month ago, at least. That was when he finally realized how cruel it could be to forget something. Not only would he forget what they had done together, he would not so much as know her name or even be aware that she existed. Even if he felt strangely drawn to her, he would never understand why. Even if some lucky twist of fate brought them together, things would never be the same. Their walk that night was no less than a funeral for them both. He would essentially kill the person he knew as Aoko Aozaki, and she would kill the person she knew as Sojiro Shizuki. Afterward, nothing would remain. That's why I wanted to ask. But if you don't want to talk about it, we can just go straight inside instead. That would be sad. Okay. I guess it's better than not talking at all, but don't blame me if it's boring. Muttering under his breath, Sojiro set off toward this house once again. This time, it was Aoko who matched his pace. There were only minutes left before their path came to its end. The cold air turned their breath into white puffs that hung frozen in the dark night. Looking back on their conversation later, Aoko would think it seemed more of a confession than anything else. For Sojiro, however, it was like one long, poorly told fairy tale. Life in the mountains was nothing special. We were taught and that did the exact same things every day. There were never such a thing as tomorrow. Things started in the morning and ended at night came. The days weren't linked in any way, so I never had any hopes or dreams about the future. Looking forward to the next day was a totally foreign concept until I moved here. It was hard to get used to at first, but I didn't particularly even want to. But everybody kept saying, "See you tomorrow," with such confidence. Before I knew it, I started dreaming about tomorrow too. Sojiro kept walking as he spoke. He stared straight ahead as if telling his story to the night itself, not once turning to face Aoko. For her part, Aoko was utterly silent. She knew it was pointless to so much as nod or ask a question. One day I woke up and got started like any other day, but then I realized someone whom I'd seen every day was suddenly gone. I asked around and apparently they started feeling unwell during the night. Sometimes people who can't sleep go out on a walk by themselves, you know. A while later, people discovered a familiar-looking corpse at the bottom of the cliff. Now that I think about it, that was pretty strange. It never would have happened if we'd all been living together, but no one was bothered by it. Maybe people didn't value each other since everyone lived a day-to-day basis. There wasn't much to eat in the mountains. To avoid starvation, we often went to places most people wouldn't go. Lots of people died on the way, too. No one would even dream of stealing from others in the mountains. When you're out searching for food, the only thing you need to watch out for are dogs and bears, not other people. Here, things are the other way around, though. Anyway, half our time was taken up just with that. Sojiro continued to stare straight ahead. He did not seem troubled by his memories. To Aoko's ears, it sounded like he was describing a place no one in their right mind would want to live, as if it were perfectly normal. It was almost as if he missed it. But from that point onward, he slowly began to show more signs of distress as he spoke. The other half of our time was spent learning how to defend ourselves. It wasn't much compared to classes at school now. They just told us to notice how our bodies move and how other animals' bodies move, and how to think about it. We repeated some simple drills, kicking stones, surviving in the forest, stuff like that. Once we get into one of those sessions, night and day no longer mattered. We didn't even have the energy to notice the time of day. Sometimes you'd go a long time and realize you hadn't eaten anything for ages. I mean, we did get food eventually, so don't feel bad for us or anything. I still have no idea why we did that stuff, though. But it definitely made living in the mountains easier, so I just accepted it as what we had to do. I thought that was how life was for everyone. It felt natural and even necessary to do all that training. Sojiro? His tone was totally indifferent, but the strangeness of it all forced Aoko to interject. He glanced at Aoko and nodded as if to show he knew what she was thinking. I know it sounds strange. The training definitely seemed like it was for something more than just self-defense. I have a feeling the people who sometimes disappeared actually left the mountain for some other reason. But I never thought about any of that then. I accepted it without all really knowing what was going on or having any qualms about it, without knowing whether people were even still alive. Maybe some people would judge me for what I did, I don't know. But I do know one thing. If I hadn't learned about the outside world, I probably would have stayed there without a care in the world forever. You would have kept living on the verge of death like that, even though you didn't like it. He did not respond to her question. From then on, they continued walking in silence. Aoko could not stop thinking about all the contradictions and absurdities what he had said. The imbalance in his education, for one. His knowledge on the basics of human life was thorough, yet he knew next to nothing about modern tech. He always said he was not good at socializing, but he seemed accustomed to talking and discussion. His upbringing could not have happened that way by chance. It was most certainly an environment purposefully constructed by some third party. Aoko had no idea what that purpose could be, or who the third party was, though. Why would anyone want to create someone with a background like Sojiro's? Was it all part of a grander plan, or was there really a place deep in the mountains where it was normal to live like that? He had asked about this once in his home in the mountains, apparently. When he expressed his confusion, an elder had taken him aside, saying, "This is just how things have always been around here, boy. There's no reason to keep doing it, but there's also no reason to stop." With a laugh, the elder chose a new identity and life outside the mountain for young Sojiro and sent him off to live on his own. Aoko's home loomed at the end of their path. It was a generic home without any real distinguishing features. It seemed as if a house from town had been picked up and dropped here. One could imagine the residents were peaceful people who engaged in farming and raising animals in their spare time. Gazing at what lay before him, Sojiro finally opened his mouth to answer Aoko's earlier question. I would have. If I'd never learned about the outside world, I would have stayed there forever. But now I know, and I can never go back. Coming here made everything simple. Someone once told me that no one wants a bird that can sing. It's the same when you learn the truth about something you'd never questioned before. Once you know the truth, you just don't want it in your life anymore. No matter how badly I want it to be back in the mountains, I can't live like that anymore. There's no point in even trying. Once I learned that things meant something, I just couldn't blindly believe things anymore. That's why I left the mountains. But who knows? The world needs to be more like Sojiro. Don't just blindly believe. Stretch out. You probably are in some kind of following that you don't need to be in. Fuck, Sojiro having the hardest life lessons for real world. That was all I ever known. It was all I'd ever taught to do. That's why there had only been one problem in his life in the mountains. Himself for having questioned it. It was all his mistake. He muttered as much to himself, his voice dripping with criticism. That wasn't a mistake. You needed to get off that. I don't know what they were teaching you. Like, learning how to fight and defend yourself, yeah, that makes sense, but it sounds like some kind of militia, child army. In Aoko's opinion, the world he described was, in a sense, perfect. It raises a lot of red flags for me. The best environment to achieve a goal was one in which all elements extraneous to that goal had been removed. As long as the people involved with no concept of morality, they would consider the immoral to be correct. No, even correctness would be a foreign concept. Only one thing was for sure. The world Sojiro had come from was frozen in time. That was what made his tragedy possible. A world of wrongdoing and mistakes had created a human riddled within mistakes as well. Sojiro understood that it was wrong, and yet he still thought it beautiful, even now. Regardless of what truth behind it might have been, he considered that world perfect. He only blamed himself for having learned what existed outside that world. Just earlier, he said that he would have been happier. I don't think he would. If I never learned about the outside world, I would have stayed there forever. He surely felt the weight of the sinful words he spoke more deeply than anyone else. That's why he still wondered what had gone awry. Whose fault was it really? He did not want to answer these questions alone. He wanted her to state it clearly for him. There was a moment of silence that felt like an eternity before she spoke. I can't answer those questions for you. Her reply came quietly. She had an answer, but she couldn't tell him. It was a struggle for her to tell such a bold-faced lie. The boy reflected deeply on what she said. He knew right away that her words were coming from a place of kindness. Yeah, I understand. Now, I can appreciate your kindness during those early days. A pleasant look floated across his face, at which Aoko could only scowl. What do you mean? What do you mean? I haven't been any nicer to you than I normally am. That is a bold-faced lie. Well, you're not very nice normally, are you? She found herself unable to offer any protest against such a blunt statement. It was because she knew he was correct. I guess you're right. I'm not very nice. Sojiro smiled in response to her vaguely sad consent, as if to say, told you so. His indulgent smirk arose from his sense of personal pride in the situation. It was both warm-hearted and uncomfortable, causing Aoko to instantly regret her question. If only she had asked about something else, something random that did not matter, then she never would have ended in a mood like this. Only a few minutes remained until their path came to an end. Surrounded by a wooden fence, the house resembled an inn for passing travelers in winter. The light spilling out from the window brought to mind the images of a lively dinner table, quite the opposite of the current mood between the two. Sorry, I shouldn't have pried. Aoko stopped at the entrance of the yard. Did she feel compelled to apologize despite... No, because it was their last conversation? Sojiro's only response was to shrug it off. There's still a lot to talk about. He looked up at the house they had hiked so far to reach, his breath hanging white in the air. All signs of gloom were gone from Sojiro's face as he nodded. I think talking about it helped me reflect on the past, so I appreciate it. Besides, it's all in the past now. Maybe I can continue the story the next time we have a chance to talk. He turned his head to face Aoko with an ephemeral smile. He was his usual nonchalant self, the same as every other day. Aoko prayed that day would never come. For her own peace of mind, but also for the well-being of this very unique boy. There probably won't be a next time. And she pointed in the direction of a cave hidden by a small forest on the other side of the house. My grandfather is in the cave over there, so you should go see him. I actually wanted to ask about something else, but whatever. The spare will wear off at midnight anyway, right? A sarcastic grin spread across her face as she spoke, so Sojiro walked off totally clueless as to what fairy tale she was referencing. The forest felt so far from the house to Aoko that it was like a different place on Earth altogether. In reality, it wasn't far at all, only 5 minutes away. Farewell, Shizuki. She said it to herself as she watched him simply walk away without turning back. Though he wasn't meant to hear her words of parting, they apparently reached his ears anyway. Hey, see you around town tomorrow. He raised his hand in farewell and then disappeared into the forest. As soon as she was sure he was gone, she turned her gaze to the sky. That night, the stars were even more beautiful than the moon. He began looking at her fondly only moments before, and now he was gone into the forest with only a brief word of parting. It did not feel real. And with that, she finally understood, if a little too late to matter. She understood who had truly been the strange and unusual one. Anyone could have ended up behaving like Sojiro, but not many could keep talking on and on the way he did. Everything he had done was now perfectly sensible in light of his former life in the mountains. As a magician, she was supposed to make miracles happen, but he had arrived at a miracle of his own, though through the trials and tribulations of following what he considered to be common sense. I could never take down a bear with my own hands, after all. It was pretty impressive. Sojiro's own magic was so mundane to him that it made him depressed to talk about it. But even so, it was the kind of brilliance only possessed by humans. She pulled her eyes back down from the starry sky and began to walk. The lights were on inside and the entrance and the door were unlocked. Aoko rolled up her sleeves, checked the time, 1 hour left until midnight. She just barely managed to satisfy her parents' request to visit before the end of the year. Placing her hand on the door, she took a deep breath. She promptly stifled the faint affection and sadness she had been feeling. It was her first time back in 2 years. Upon entering high school 2 years ago, she had began living on her own. How time flew by. For some reason, these memories began to race through her mind. There she stood, one hand on the door, reflecting on the past. Once the door was opened, she would be staring at her future instead. Her hand holding the doorknob began to move. She was met with a warm scene as expected, though strangely different than that of her memories. It was comforting to encounter something familiar after being away for so long. And so, it was with a small unspoken gratitude that Aoko returned to her home. Without stopping to ring the doorbell, she called out with a smile, "I'm home." The moment Sojiro stepped inside, he was struck with a strange feeling of familiarity. It was not a mere nostalgia either. No, it reached further back into the past. It was a feeling far beyond what he could ever imagine. He was reminded of someone, but he could not remember whom. Perhaps he was only reminded of himself, or perhaps of the old man before him now in the cavern. He appeared to be an old man anyway. Sojiro could not make out any details beyond a vague outline. As far as he could tell, this figure did not seem to have anything in the way of a face capable of making expressions. All he knew was that the smoke-like figure before him was the one Aoko called grandfather. "I guess I want to thank you for everything you did for my girls." Though hoarse, the old man's voice was powerful and rang throughout the cavern. "It was fate that we would meet. Tell me, what is it you wish for?" "I don't wish for anything, but there is something I'd like to ask you. Why are you making those two fight each other?" "I cannot provide an answer to that. There's a story outside of my control." "I heard you were the one responsible for it." "The stars are to blame. The two were given incompatible talents. It is simply how they respond to one another. Whenever they're together, they find a way to fight, though through any design of mine. They used to keep enough distance to avoid conflict, though. Perhaps the things they fought over were more innocuous. Or perhaps they were very serious, in which case they must have suffered immensely. You value a spirit of coexistence even when you can see that it would harm you, but the girls chose not to follow the path. So, you're putting the blame on them? Even though the reasons for their fighting all lead back to you. Indeed. The girls' fighting is a reflection of their lives. I take zero responsibility for the reasons for which they do it. You mean there's zero physical proof of your involvement? No. That claim is simply meaningless. When the girls were born, the only real line of causality you can draw between us, I had already left this era. They have given rise to all events since. I played no intervening role. If either of them reaches the end of their time in this realm, or even if they both do, it matters not to me. In fact, I have never considered that to be of importance. A life, a title deserving the value I can offer has not yet come to be. Whatever may happen between the two of them, it doesn't change what I have to do. You mean all you care about is getting your heir, no matter whether Aoko lives or dies? In a manner of speaking, yes. That's why my body has yet to disappear. Steamy energy that filled the cavern made Sojiro's head reel. The moment Aoko and Toko were born, their grandfather seemed to have completely forgotten that they were his granddaughters. It was hard to imagine a satisfactory Aozaki heir ever being born. No amount of power would satisfy the old man. He showed no signs of compromise or restraint. I assume you know Aoko threw everything away for this? It's empty. There was nothing but silence. However, this short moment of quiet would occur only once. The unreadable outline of the old man grew blurrier still. Long ago, a child wandered into the cave, her karma empty. The old man automatically granted her request to be born from innocence and ignorance. He was a magician who had given up his ego in order to extend his own lifespan, and he did whatever he could to help the child. It had been an incredible coincidence to happen that day. Faced with the sin that she had invited, the child had glared at the old man with tear-filled eyes. Everything will be lost. It will happen. Completely and without warning, thanks to the failure of a nobody, thanks to you, he had declared. The child threw a tantrum at how unfair it all was. The magician claimed that was merely the way of the world. The child stood up to him. Shut up, old man! And then, the child ran around in tears trying to make the old man pay for the cost of a life, at the cost of all lives. You're mistaken, boy. Perhaps that's how it happened. She didn't throw anything away. She lives to make her past more beautiful. That role had likely come to an end long ago, however. The old man's appearance seemed to change before Sojiro's eyes. Just a brief moment, he wavered in the air as if in a haze. Let me correct your error. The girls understand me very well. In fact, I think they understand me better than I do myself. I am not concerned with who they are, or likewise, they don't appreciate who I am. I doubt doubts of my absence have ever crossed their minds. They've always been so proud in all their fighting, unwilling to debase themselves. It's cruel to expect you to deal with all that, though. You seem through asking questions now. It's my turn. What is your name? Sojiro answered the old man's question. His smoky face seemed to frown, quivering ever so slightly. How unexpected. You say you're all alone, and yet the meaning of your name implies the existence of multiple, bearing the character of 10. It doesn't quite suit you. No, not at all. But I think it is correct. When I'm in a place of imbalance, one needs an imbalanced name to match. Rare, yes, but also worthless. Resigning oneself of affirmation stems from a will to die. One-time talent in a single generation means nothing if there's no one to continue the family line. I was interested in the way you were able to influence Aoko, but ultimately you did not meet expectations. Seems the time was spent for nothing. You are bound together for the time being, but it is inevitable that you will go your separate ways. Now, be gone. I have no use for the dead. We will not meet again. Everything grew blurry. Sochiro's memories began to fade. It had been a conversation without any answers, an encounter without any significance, now vanished completely like a dream. You fucking asshole! The air was cold, the sky beautiful. The evening sky at the end of each day looked different from the last. Each sunset could be seen from one day and one day only. The sky may not look dramatically different to the human eye from one day to the next. Every day we wake up a new person and forget the beautiful sights, the moments of heartbreak, and all the other fleeting feelings that seemed so real the day before. Simple statements such as these felt all the more profound in the still air of the mountains, more bone-piercing than the winter cold itself. Sojiro stared up at the sky as if he'd forgotten when and where he was. Aoko's look of stunned surprise brought him back to the present. Azaki, that was fast. Sojiro turned to face Aoko, who had only just stepped outside her family's yard. At first she had been too shocked to move or speak, but she quickly regained her composure and marched forward. She continued until she was standing right before him, with an intense scowl on her face. Sojiro slouched instinctively, bracing for impact. He had not the slightest idea what could have made her so angry. What are you still doing here? After I finally managed to convince myself things were over. She was obviously irritated with him. In any case, the anger would have to subside before she could decide whether she was happy or sad to see him. Humans get angry when things do not go the way they had hoped. It's hardly been more than 10 minutes. How could you be standing there? It was supposed to have taken an entire day for her grandfather to erase his memories from the past month. She had been planning to let her grandfather handle all the details, and yet here Sojiro was, staring dumbly at the sky. He's no astrologer, he just likes looking at the sky. Bombarded with Aoko's unspoken emotion, he proceeded to explain himself. He gave me a message for you. He said you shouldn't go around asking other people to erase my memories. You should do it yourself. Apparently he wanted me to come just to have someone to complain to. Hearing this, Aoko finally began to feel like herself again. Despite having been ready to dish out the punishment only a few moments earlier, she now felt quite calm. Well, he's right that it's not like me to expect someone else to clean up my messes. The intense look in her eyes slowly faded to her usual mildly irritated expression. It relieved Sojiro to see her like this. She was finally back to her normal self. If that's enough for you, then let's get going. We'll miss the last train if we don't hurry. With that, he walked off without waiting for an answer. Aoko stared at his retreating figure for a brief moment before quietly cursing him under her breath and following after him. Their descent back to the station was much easier than the way there. A sheet of darkness spread out below them. There in the middle of that ocean of black was a single light, the tiny glowing station. They walked for some time in silence. Alko recalled their earlier conversation and felt she had been too naive. She should have avoided all the serious stuff if this was how things were going to end up. Sojiro, meanwhile, was thinking of nothing at all, just like usual. For him, the silence felt quite natural, while for her, it was awkwardly uncomfortable. Suddenly, Sojiro blurted out the strangest thing without thinking. We should pick up some mochi for Alice on the way back. Aoko's eyes grew wide, her pupils reduced to mere points. Aoko had so many questions going around in her head, she wanted to rail at the paradox that was Sojiro. Mochi? Why? Because it's fan-fucking-tastic! As a gift. We left her all alone at the mansion. We should do something nice for her. It'll make her happy. Aoko raised her hand to her head in concern. Unprotected by the warmth of a pair of gloves, her slender fingers were white from the cold. I don't think she'll be happy, but maybe coming from Sojiro, it'll be okay. His seemingly selfless attitude came in handy sometimes. Alice would most likely accept his gift without making a scene. Gotcha. She's the type to resent something like that and hold a slight grudge over it, though. Why does the gift have to be mochi, anyway? Well, I get the feeling she's never eaten one before. All Aoko could do in response to such a simple-minded observation was nod in agreement. The image of Alice eating mochi popped into her head, and suddenly the prospect of getting back to the mansion felt like a little more exciting. You really are a regular space cadet. You know that? Speaking of which, since when have you and Alice been such good terms? Did something happen? Aoko peered at him the way she would at a strange specimen as he took a deep breath and launched into an earnest explanation. I don't think there's any particular time I can point to when it happened. But if I had to say, it started the first time we spoke. We got a lot closer after talking that time in the foyer, too. That's it. Yeah, getting to know someone is all about little moments like that. Wouldn't you agree? Sojiro seemed to find her question odd. The way he and Alice communicated went beyond words. Aoko could only assume that was how he did it. Come to think of it, you always just called her Alice and not by her surname. Have I? I don't even remember now. More importantly, though, why are you so mad? I'm not mad. Her response was slightly cold, but also somehow gentle. She wants you to call her Aoko, not Aozaki. They approached the halfway point of the mountain path. The night sky appeared more distant as they neared the bottom, and Sojiro continued to stare absent-mindedly at the stars. Then it finally hit her why his behavior had been bothering her since their ascent. She realized he must be feeling nostalgia. He missed the way the stars looked up from the mountains. Azaki. He spoke without looking down from the heavens. I've been meaning to ask, do you have anything you regret? Sojiro's breath was white in the night air, his hands jammed in his pockets. Aoko had a vague feeling somewhere deep inside that he was only a figment of her imagination. Where did that question come from? Just answer it. I want to know. Do you have any regrets or not? It was a sad thing to ask. He would be hurt one way or another, no matter how she answered. but he wanted an answer, so she gave him one. Regrets? Of course not. I make a point to live my life with no regrets. Regrets are something you have, Sojiro. They're something you get rid of. Sojiro grunted in response. He bit his lip and pushed down the flood of emotions that rose up inside of him. He waved his hand slightly without actually raising it, as if to shoo away something formless and odorless. So, regrets are just something to get rid of, huh? Pain was subtly visible on his face as he spoke, and yet it was so vivid. As much as he wanted to, he did not have the strength to say it aloud. He was not like her, able to speak her mind so readily. Maybe someday. The sky and the darkness were both far away now. Tonight's grand view only to be seen this once. He hoped its beauty would remain in his mind forever. But what then of the regrets he had come to hold inside, of the days he had spent that now shone like stars in the sky? Would they too be with him forever? Nice sky tonight. It's a much better view than the ones from town. Aoko mimicked Sojiro, looking up at the darkness overhead. The stars shone brighter than in town. This clarity was thanks to the absence of any other lights amidst the darkness. Sojiro stared at her with almost a sense of loathing. As beautiful as the stars were, there was nothing the real thing. They were not the real thing, not here. Yeah, but they're still too far to ever reach. Huh? Sojiro's negativity caused her to turn to him in shock. The anger in his eyes had died down now. Taking a breath, he began to speak, as if talking to himself. His gaze never left the stars. It's not like this in the mountains. There, the stars feel so close, even if they're technically too far away to touch. It really feels like you could just reach out and grab them. The stars in the cities don't even give you that feeling. He was speaking of the sky in its purest state. The starry skies of the mountains far exceeded those of any urban planetarium. Their movement was like the pouring of rain. He spoke of the primal sky, unchanged from the past, the same sky humans had traced with their fingers since prehistoric times. For him, it was a past to which he could never return. A place to which he did not even know the way back. I used to compare everything here to the mountains. I really hated it then, and I'm still not used to it now. At some point, I'll start looking at the mountains from the city dweller's perspective, I'm sure. The mountains are in my past now. That was his one regret. He lowered his gaze from the stars and turned to Aoko. Her eyes were unusually hesitant and looked slightly hurt. Was it empathy they showed, or pity? Either way, he was the reason for the uncharacteristic look of her face now. He shut his eyes and nodded in response to her unspoken question. It's true. I can't help it. But if this is the way it's going to be, I've got to make the most of it. So that someday I can stop seeing it as a regret. There was gratitude in Sojiro's voice as he confessed his feelings. Remnants from the past must one day be released. Loss must be overcome. He had lost it, his everything, the moment she answered his query. Oh, cut it out. Don't act like I caused some kind of turning point in your life. She smiled weakly and averted her eyes as she spoke those hurtful words. Most likely, she was being completely honest, and in that, she was being true to herself. So, what did you and my grandfather talk about? It's rare for him to care about anyone besides himself. The topic had finally been broached, and yet Sojiro said nothing. An empty reply can be used to buy time. They had nearly reached the flat road at the base of the mountain. The soft earth here would soon give way to the tightly packed dirt of the paths running between them between the rice fields. Before they got that far, Sojiro came to an abrupt halt. Closing his eyes, he listened carefully. He then gave a firm nod and turned to face Aoko. Congratulations, Aozaki, she blinked, not knowing what to make of it. What's with you all of a sudden? It was a perfectly natural response. The tension melted from his face as she said, Happy New Year. He now wore a smile of full joy. Dumbfounded, all Aoko could do was stare back at his calm visage. His surprise attack hit her so hard she thought she could hear the shrine bell in Yashidogi singing in the new year. She had known it was the last day of the year, but had not given it much thought beyond that. And so his second words gave her quite the shock, as if the girl who believed in the power of the bell all those years ago had come back. Oh, right. It's midnight now, so the new year is here. She spoke in a hushed tone, as if this was shocking news. At the same time, a slight smile crept onto her face. A new year indeed. She recalled the first time she had worn a full-length kimono, how she had not been particularly uncomfortable, but not especially pretty either. The only pretty thing about her had been the moment she smiled at herself in the mirror. Seeing the warmth in her eyes, Sojiro closed his own in satisfaction. It made him happy to see her like that. Well, a lot happened in the past year, but I'm glad to be able to start a new one with you. With that, he went walking off once more. The thought of Alice waiting alone was probably what spurred him into action. Aoko recalled his words as she walked alongside him. The moment he had declared the start of a new year, the way he had spoken so naturally, it made him suddenly feel like they had known each other for years. She could not be blamed for being filled with happiness at the thought. And yet, a day would surely come when they could have to say their goodbyes. Until then, however, it would not do any harm to behave as if they were old friends. He was a naive yet incredibly unique young man. And they walked. She wondered how long this fleeting feeling of friendship would last. She looked up wistfully at the sky, just the way Sojiro had done earlier on their walk. Every star was out, without a cloud in the sky. The two strode down the mountain path beneath stars that lay ever beyond their reach. This hits hard to see it ended. It was on a lazy Sunday morning that I discovered the book. Post-credit scenes. Was I an intruder? No. Adventurer. Either way, I'd made my way to the forbidden Kuonji Estate Library. The book instantly drew my attention as it looked like it had been intentionally hidden there on the bookshelf. It was large enough to double as a shield, and so took great effort for me to remove it from the shelf. Flipping through, I realized it was a grimoire of ruined magecraft, and a first edition at that. Surprised as I was by my find, my search came to a halt on the page I'd been looking for. It was a rune for memory erasure that the Nordic gods had once used on a Valkyrie. For minutes, I simply stared at the page where the rune methodology was laid out. And then finally, I shut the book. I returned it to the shelf in an even harder to detect location than where I'd originally found it. That's when it hit me. I'd seen this book before somewhere. When and where exactly had I seen it, though? Yeah, it was when he first invited me to spend time with him. The girl sitting before me had it in hand at the time. That must have been it. Unable to keep the smile off my face, I decided to put the book back exactly where I'd found it. It would be most difficult to find when mixed in with other books on the shelf. However, out of respect for her gracious efforts, I decided to pretend I'd never seen it at all. I shouted my discovery, so to speak. That's when I heard the shouting of a familiar voice in the main building. Lately, he seemed to have found his calling as a housekeeper and had taken to cleaning every corner of the mansion. That was all well and good, but there were a few things that were off limits, which neither Alice nor I dared touch. He was the type to open things without asking, which put us all in hot water. There had been an uproar when he released the ghost ship that Alice's mother had kept around. Catching that little speed demon known as the Cutty Sark had been quite the ordeal. I still felt bad for having to rely on that creepy golden wolf for help. Before that, he lifted the seal of the troop of spirits in the basement, which had led to even creepier people from the church coming to the mansion for an entire week. Going back even further, there was also the time he ventured unsolicited into Alice's room. In the ensuing chaos, I fell into the mirror, and we almost ended up in an all-out war with Alice. Come to think of it, he really and truly lacked any capacity for learning. That idiot needs to get a handle on himself. The good mood I'd been up until that moment was spoiled, and I went dashing out of the library. I imagined coming upon the architect of my troubles standing there in the hallway and giving me the swift drop kick to the face he deserved. As far as I was concerned, that would be just another fun day in the mansion. And so our little secret remained hidden on the bookshelf. They hid away the... Okay! Alice, you conniving little... I love you. Alko, you've also gained even more respect. I'm so glad you just were like, screw this book. I don't need it. Likely never to be opened again. That's exactly where you hide it. Up top shelf, pushed a little back, crammed between the ceiling and the bookshelf. The Honey Adventure. What? So we got one more chapter to read. I think we can get that done today. I don't want to end it, but we can't just leave it like this. Okay, so it goes back to this. So guess we do have to go to the archive. Extra, there we go. Archive. Nope, this, The Honey Adventure, read. It had been 1 year since we'd moved into the city from his remote village. One thing he'd realized during that time was that likes and dislikes were the main difference between human and beast.
Oh, so this is the new hideout, huh? Not bad, I guess. It's a bit shabby, but I like how there's no people around.
The figure dressed in white coat danced to and fro down the hallway. He was a little young woman in an old... He was like a young woman in an old film, enjoying herself window shopping. He was actually enjoying the atrocious sight of the school building in ruins.
Settle down. This place is falling apart. It was built over 60 years ago, you know. The floor could fall out from underneath you at any moment.
His mouth shut before he could even say to let him have his fun. Only one set of footsteps echoed through the hall. Not a single feather's worth of his 70-pound body was exerting any force on the floor beneath him. It wasn't clear whether he was paying reverence to the hallway or simply excited by it. It's said that even walking through a grassy field, a beast is careful not to harm a single blade of grass. Apparently, this creature wrapped in a coat was no different. He was more a part of the environment itself than a settler of it. He held no regard for beasts greater or lesser than him, but when it came to his comrades, he at least displayed human-like or rather wolf-like clemency.
Well, I'm glad you I'm glad you at least like this place. I'm going to town. Do you need anything? Comics? Books?
Nothing especially.
Oh, if you could pick me up a hamburger on your way back, that'd be great. The one with the fluffy bun and thick patty. Still thinking with your stomach, huh? We'll need you to figure out a reliable source of food if we want to survive here. I wonder if this was a mistake. A hotel with room service might actually leave less evidence behind.
Toko let out a defeated sigh. With her glasses on, she was restricted to her original way of speaking and gesturing. It was the beginning of December. Exactly 1 month had passed since they came to Misaki City. Until now, Toko had been attacking Misaki from a nearby neighborhood. Deciding it was time to get serious, she had moved her base of operations to this old school building.
Huh? So, you think a hotel would have been better? That would be easier for sure. Hotels are nice to live in, especially if they're decent quality. But I know you, Toko. You're really into these kinds of rooms, aren't you? Eh? Really? Yeah, especially ones like this. Whenever you get interested in something, you don't want anyone to get around you or like the same things you're into, even though you have so many interests.
Why did it look like her eyes just went the wrong direction right there? Maybe it's the animation, maybe it was my own eyesight. Toko couldn't deny that observation. She had been under contract with him for 2 years, but it had only been around a year since he became her full-time bodyguard. He seemed to be able to see right through to the root of all the problems that plagued Toko.
I don't particularly hate crowds, though. An abandoned building or factory, or even an amusement park would have been okay, too. It's just that here in the countryside, simply having you around is enough to get the rumor mill churning. My only option is to set up operations out here in the mountain. But I'm in a human form. I don't think I'll stick out that much. It's a matter of fitting in. Even if you can't look Asian, we could probably get by if your hair was at least black.
Unfortunately, that wouldn't be happening. Simply being in human form was stressful for him. When he had to be human, his only condition was that he could look however he wanted. He was currently only in this form because he had to move from town to the old school building. Once he found a classroom to sleep in, he'd be back to a wolf.
Why do you hate being in human form so much anyways? It's not particularly difficult to stay like that, is it? Aren't you originally an astral body?
being an extremely versatile life form which required no body to remain stable. In the physical world, his body would change according to the situation. Magecraft would have defined him as a higher dimensional life form with a materialized soul.
It's not hard or dangerous, just annoying. Humans don't like doing things they don't have to, right? Well, it's the same for me. There's no particular reason for me to ever be in human form.
Apparently, he saw no value at all in his human form. That was exactly why Toko insisted he make his appearance blend in more, but the boy argued that if he had to be in a natural state, he'd at least make himself comfortable. To him, this was the only fun way to be a human, but he was going to accept it any other way. And so this was why he had taken on the appearance of a foreign aristocrat in a provincial Japanese city. Even his posh coat had been handpicked by Toko to satisfy one of his many demands.
Keep an eye on the place while I'm out, okay, Bayo? I don't think anyone will stumble upon us, but if they do, be sure to hold them back until I get back. You can rough them up a bit if you need to, but no more than one leg.
And with that statement, Toko headed off into the city.
Hi, you got it. Don't worry, I don't like how humans taste anyway. I'll be fine here. Just don't forget to bring me back something yummy.
Bayo popped down onto the desk after he saw his employer off. He morphed back into his wolf form.
So bored. How did I end up here in this country town after traveling around the world?
It had been 2 years since Bayo met Toko Aozaki. After some deliberation with the werewolves, the mage was left in charge of Bayo's education. Of course, his village had no real control over him. He didn't have to go with her. He decided to go simply because she seemed interesting. Toko stood before him in the cave where he slept and asked,
Wait, you want to know the meaning of life? Is that really why you agreed to this?
She smiled and cut off her long locks of hair to seal their pack.
To know freedom, you must also know restraint. Similarly, if you want to know the meaning of life, then you must have a reason not to die. For example, if you harbor a hatred so strong you yourself can't fathom dying before you kill that person.
That hair was 20 years worth of Toko's life. In a way, her hair was part of herself, but she parted with it easily. She was sure that Bayo was worth the 20 years it had taken her to grow that hair. Bayo too sensed that Toko was a creature of rare value. He was happy to have been selected by someone of her unusual talents, and though she preached learning restraint, he observed that she was truly a free woman. And then, Bayo accepted the terms of her contract and left his village. He took his first steps into the outside world. First year was spent at Toko's workshop in England, learning basic knowledge. Namely, it was at a college of mage associates called the Clockwork Tower. At the time, Toko had her own dedicated familiar. Formally speaking, this familiar was Bayo Sr. But in that year's time, Bayo proved himself superior and earned the right to travel the world with Toko. They rode on a train that collected mystic eyes, known as the Rail Zeppelin. They saw the Merkrake, an ancient giant octopus living in the North Sea. They explored the Bermuda Triangle, a place of no return connected to other realms. They met the remains of a mage of the Elder Title, a league of ancients deep in Western Europe. All of their exploits were odd and exciting enough to hold his interest. And throughout them all, Bayo felt that he'd been right to join Toko. This was certainly less boring than sleeping in his cave. But sweet honey makes one crave even sweeter poison. Having developed a taste for adventure, he now demanded even greater thrills. It was only natural that such an innocent creature would start to look forward to its next prey. The pinnacle of that desire rested on Toko's final goal. For all her liberty and aplomb, there was one prey she would not stop chasing until she caught it once and for all. With every new adventure, Bayo would ask,
So, is this the person you want to kill, Toko?
However, the mage would always simply smile wryly and shake her head in response. Even this puppet master, an extraordinary talent, claimed that it was no easy task. Her target was in a realm far beyond anyone that dealt with so far, beyond human knowledge, perhaps even Bayo. But who could this mysterious person be, and how could they be so powerful? Bayo couldn't help but be curious. Discovering that he was hired for magical reasons, he mustered a rare bit of fighting spirit, thinking he'd found a worthy foe, but...
You know, I think it's kind of childish for the real thing to take on an imposter. At the end of the day, this so-called magic is just another thing that humans made.
Clearly it was still only interested in itself. It knew nothing of life or freedom. Its only pleasure was found in food. Bayo didn't necessarily feel dissatisfied, but it was becoming harder to starve off his boredom. Also, since accompanying Toko on her adventures, his feeling toward her had become a bit confused.
Toko, I think you're obsessed. You can literally do anything you want, just like me, and yet that's what you focus your energy on?
He slumped his shoulders exaggeratedly and closed his eyes. The golden wolf drifted off to sleep, not realizing that his feelings were in fact those of jealousy.
This place sure has changed in the last 4 years. Do they really need to tear down and rebuild the entire front of that station? And, yep, the smoke shop in the corner is gone. Oh, well, guess I'll have to get used to the idea of buying cigarettes from a vending machine.
Toko walked through her hometown for the first time in 4 years, grumbling to herself. She was on an aimless and careless stroll. No familiar escorted her, and she'd even left her self-defense bag back at the hideout. Today she was in full tourist mode, not nervous about a thing.
This place is no bigger than a footpath before. And now it's an actual street. It's odd. I know I'm home, but it feels like going back to that town overseas.
This was Toko's second time going back home. After leaving the Aozaki home 4 years ago, she secretly returned to Misaki. First time was longer ago. When Toko was 14 years old, she studied abroad at an academy in England. She spent 2 years there before returning to Japan. Then she enrolled in a local high school named Rayan Girls Academy and headed back to England 3 years later after graduating. That was 4 years ago. Now she felt the same as she did then, when she returned to that English country town where she lived for 2 years.
Lonely? Not really. Disappointed? Not exactly. Scared doesn't sound quite right, but maybe.
She rounded her shoulders and fell deep into thought. Toko felt a tingle run up her spine in a way that couldn't really be described in words. Times were changing faster than ever. Everything was relatively inexpensive and could not be replaced on a whim. After thinking to herself for a bit, she cracked her knuckles and set forth. There was no use overthinking any of this. This was just how things were now. That's all there was to it. It was only natural for old to make way for the new.
This is it. My time is now. You can do this, Toko.
The silly spark of self-enlightenment gave Toko the encouragement she needed, and she set off with high spirits toward the train station. Straining down the boulevard, she exuded the confidence of a supermodel or dictator. Although she was not about to exclaim, "My conquest begins with Main Street, time to tear it up." Her enthusiasm was, of course, still there. Toko, however, had something she had to accomplish first, before she could give thought to putting an end to the town's thoughtless attempts at modernization, what would become outdated in just a few years. Pachinko.
This machine's a winner for sure. Do they really think they could fool anyone with a peg set like this?
Toko's first destination was not one of Misaki's protective sigils, but rather her old favorite pachinko parlor. Though the area around the train station had undergone a dramatic makeover, the back streets were mostly unchanged. Toko had exchanged 5,000 yen for some little silver pachinko balls. Before going upstairs and sitting at the machine she determined was paying out the most for the day.
Maybe that's a good time to stop. Let's see, I've got 12 boxes so far. Not too shabby after not playing for 4 years.
She sounded slightly disappointed, but her lips and posture betrayed her good humor. Pachinko parlors were a staple form of entertainment in Japan, but they were largely absent in other countries. Explains why I have no idea what the fuck pachinko is. High-stake gamers criticized it as inefficient, time-consuming, too luck-dependent, unrewarding, and so forth. Basically, a child's game. When Toko was studying abroad, she didn't see anything that even resembled a pachinko parlor. However, she wasn't here playing pachinko because she was feeling nostalgic. After 5 years, she simply needed a war chest.
I didn't think the helicopter alone would set me over budget. Japan's so absurdly peaceful that all the black market dealers were too damned expensive. Now that I'm totally broke, I have to at least make a little coin to keep Bayo fed.
Toko had chartered a helicopter to airlift 3 shipping containers full of materials to remodel the old school building into a workshop. There weren't any roads or truck could take to get to the old school out deep in the mountains, so she had been forced to burn through the last of her savings.
Oh, 3 sevens. This game's just about done for.
Oh, it's slot machines. Got it.
Really? Only these boring games are worth playing for profit these days.
Her smile remained in spite of her complaints. There was nothing more Toko-esque than her sitting cross-legged in this pachinko parlor, one hand on the machine with the other holding a cheap cigarette. Toko noticed something out of the corner of her eyes and put on her glasses to see better. She glanced over toward the odd sounds she heard and saw a pale-faced parlor employee. He had a baby face and looked like he was still in high school. Oh, it's this moment! Upon seeing Toko, he froze for a moment, then ran off. Or rather, he fled in a panic.
Oof, am I that scary?
No, he's dealing with some shit. It's this moment. Got it. Mage though she was, Toko was still the prime of her youth. Though she didn't like it when guys ogled her or tried to strike up a conversation, she thought a boy running full tilt away from her was a bit much. Toko made a mental note to scare the crap out of that kid the next time she saw him and returned to her game. With her winning tickets in hand, Toko left the pachinko parlor. She won quite a bit, but it was hard for her to feel good about it after what had happened at the end of her session. Wondering what that had been about, she looped around the back of the parlor to redeem her winnings for cash. Well, if it isn't Toko. She stopped in her track, frozen by a familiar voice. She hadn't heard him for years. Bayo's ears perked up as he woke up from his slumber. It was just before sunset. He opened his eyes with a big yawn, sniffing at a familiar scent in the air, getting closer. Bayo jumped up down the floor and transformed back into his human form. Though he and Toko didn't have a strict master-servant relationship, he felt he should at least go and greet her, since he was supposed to be watching over the place in her absence. Huh? Bayo's face scrunched into a perplexed frown as they met in the hallway. He sensed something more to the smell that he'd been so used to.
Hey Bayo, I'm back. Here's your reward for watching the place while I was out.
Toko handed him a paper bag she was holding to Bayo. Bayo was happy to get his hands on the bag stuffed full of hamburgers, but he tilted his head at the odd lingering scent.
Why the long face? Did something happen while I was gone?
No, I slept. It was so boring, actually. Did something happen with you, though? You seem a little down, weirdly tired. And stranger than anything is the fact that you bought me my favorite hamburgers.
Oh, really? Nothing happened, though.
He knows that's a bold-faced lie. This was extremely suspicious. One pain point for Bayo was Toko's usual complete lack of interest in food. Toko thought that a hamburger was the same no matter where you ate one, so she had often just stopped wherever was closest. Thus, Toko would only stop at a certain Asian burger chain, still rare in Japan, maybe 1% of the time. Not to mention...
What's the big deal? So I bought you hamburgers from your favorite place. Who cares? I was just trying to say thank you for everything. I've dragged you all over the place, and I just hope you'll stick with me.
She had a sickly sweet smile on her face. What the fuck is going on? If any of the puppets she had had let loose and Misaki heard what she was saying right now, they'd probably fall into logic error loop and self-destruct. Toko was not one to ever consider the rights of her familiars.
It all smells fake, false, full of lies to me. You're not suspicious to me. You're not supposed to be nice. You're never nice. You hate everyone and everything around you. Complain constantly and want to ruin anyone else who is having a good time. You only restrain yourself because you don't have a good reason to act. What happened to the Toko that had nothing but a shred of intellect standing between herself and a complete moral bankruptcy?
Well, that's awfully rude. I can be nice sometimes, you know. It's been 4 years since I've been back here. Wouldn't you feel a little relaxed if you went back to your village? That's how it is for me. I'm still young, cute, and innocent enough to feel a little homesick from time to time.
Wow, what a load of crap. It must be the cold day in hell.
I'm serious. That's it. You've ruined the moment. Give me back those hamburgers. You don't get to eat tonight.
Toko made a grab for the paper bag, but Bayo dodged and jumped out the window. He dexterously kicked off against the wall and scampered up onto the roof of the old school building.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. I never want to see you making excuses like that, Miss Toko.
He pulled out a hamburger from the paper bag and took a big bite of it. That said, though her attitude had seemed like an act to Bayo, it was true that Toko was in an unusually good mood. It was unclear why that was the case, but Toko seemed to be feeling something special, or at least something she hadn't ever shown Bayo before.
What could that smell be?
It was so light, but also annoying. Bayo couldn't understand what exactly that feeling was. He only knew basic feelings, such as like and dislike, delicious or disgusting. He wasn't able to articulate much further than that.
Whatever. It has nothing to do with me anyway. She'll be the same old Toko tomorrow, I'm sure.
Bayo continued to eat through his hamburger, still not completely satisfied with the day's course of events. The truth was, even if Bayo didn't care enough to understand it, he was still a little upset that there was something he didn't know. A few days passed. Unbeknownst to the people of Misaki, progress was being made to the remodeling of the old school building. Meanwhile, Bayo was bored out of his mind knowing he had been stuck here for at least another month. He could feel both his body and mind dulling as he spent his days simply lounging around eating meat. On the other hand,
I'm going shopping. Take care of the place while I'm gone. Have fun while I'm... Oh, how's that? Here, I brought you some home roast. Some roast beef. I'm going out for a bit. Tidy up those materials on the roof while I'm out, okay? I'm home. Thanks for watching over the place again today.
girls getting laid.
Off I go, my trusty vassal. Hey, good work. I smell like booze. Oh, silly, I'm not drunk at all. Not one bit. I can keep going.
This is what Toko had become. Mage was constantly out and always in a good mood, in stark contrast to Bayo, who spent his days doing nothing. Evidently, she was happy with how her workshop was becoming more and more fortified by the day.
No, that's definitely not it. That isn't enough to put Miss Toko in such a good mood. She's constantly complaining about the state of this place. Plus, the silly samurai way she's been talking is so not like her.
What's wrong, Bayo? You look unhappy. I bet you're ready to get out of here and go wild, huh?
That's not my problem here. I do want to hurry up and get this fight on, but I know it's not going to be for a while yet. I'm just waiting and doing as you ask. But something's weird. I know there's always nothing to do when we're preparing, but this time it doesn't feel tense the way it should. I'm just eating and sleeping every day. It's going to make me fat. I don't want to be fat.
What are you talking about? You shouldn't be worried about that. You don't even need to use the bathroom, so don't act like you are any kind of normal creature. Fair point.
Fair point, but you will. You're going to get fat as a pig.
Are you serious? I've been weighing myself and the numbers hasn't changed at all. Am I astrally getting fatter? Can you tell?
This is what Bayo was talking about. Toko knew the accuracy of Bayo's eye, trusted his discerning vision over even the numbers on her scale. Normally, Toko would just remove her glasses and say something like,
I know this is out of the blue, but I want to test the utility of the suicide attack weapon. No, I don't want to hear your opinion about it, Bayo. Just put the collar on. It'll launch you and high into the sky.
but she hadn't done anything of the sort, and it was beyond weird for her.
No, you haven't gained any weight. There's a slight variation from yesterday, but that's normal for a human. It would be really silly for you to worry about that seriously, so please don't.
Really? You don't think I'm just gonna show up later or anything?
No, the nutrients you consumed yesterday have distributed nicely throughout your body. You're the same Toko as always.
That last part was a lie. She was not the same Toko that Bayo had always known. Even though she was physically the same, there was something still odd about her since a few days ago. That strange, floaty, lingering scent was still there. It was a change that only a wild beast like Bayo could discern, but it was getting stronger with each passing day. Bayo was annoyed because he just could not figure out what that scent was.
What a relief. I'm at it out. Take care of this place while I'm out.
Toko failed to notice Bayo's poor mood and left the old school building in her usual carefree mood. This was how it's been for days now. Bayo stared at his own reflection in the window and contemplated for a while. Unfortunately, this wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't change the fact that his employer was still acting strangely, and it wouldn't get rid of the uncertainty he was constantly feeling in his chest. He knew he didn't have much other choice.
I guess I'll tell her.
He decided to let go of his principles for just one day. They say winter's going to be colder than usual this year. Make sure you've got sufficient food, clothing, and shelter. We should be fine on clothing, but make sure you just shore up the other two. He listened to the talk around the town as he passed through Misaki. It was just past 1 in the afternoon on a weekday. Workers had returned to the office after their lunch breaks, and their kids were still all in school. The main street was fairly calm and relaxed, with mostly housewives out and about. Yet one person stood out in this calm, gentle sea of people. Toko endured the stares of the housewives out shopping, salespeople in their shops, and salarymen out on business as she walked through the main street. It wasn't just her sense of style that stood out, but also her generally powerful presence that attracted eyes. To put it simply, she walked with confidence of a model on the runway.
She's always telling me not to try to stand out, but look at her. It won't be only my fault if we're discovered.
Bayo kept about 10 yards behind Toko, careful not to actually mutter the words he was thinking in his head. In Toko's defense, she was fully aware of how much she stood out in a crowd. If she was out at a busier time of day, she always wore an accessory inscribed with a rune that diverted people's attention away from her and made her stand out approximately 40% less. Toko finished her shopping and headed toward the residential part of town. She walked up to a house that looked completely normal, rang the doorbell, and after stating her name, the door opened quietly. It looked as though the things she had bought were for the resident of this house. The nameplate outside read Asagi. Misaki was in the mountains, but for just a moment, Bayo got a whiff of sea brine. Assuming he must have just mistaken it for some other smell, he put it out of his mind. Toko came out of the house after about 30 minutes. She stretched her arm above her head and took a deep breath. Whatever had gone inside seemed to have been rather serious. It was as if a weight had been lifted up from her shoulders.
That takes care of those negotiations, at least. Now all that's left is the final reminder.
Toko murmured, exasperated. But lurking behind her words, Bayo could still detect the lofty scent emanating from her mouth. Her next stop was another plain-looking apartment. It looked as though she had just happened to walk by, but Bayo's nose was not so easily deceived. Toko made it look like she was just aimlessly killing time, but she had in fact arranged to arrive at the apartment at exactly 2:30 p.m. In the parking lot of the apartment...
Huh?
Ritsuka Suse stepped out of the room of the first floor.
Hey, long time no see. Fancy seeing you here, Ritsuka. No way! Is that you, Toko? You're back in town? Yeah, since a little bit ago. I've been hiding out and laying low. It goes without saying that I'm here to crush this town. Of course, I've come totally prepared to wipe the slate clean of my past this time. That's why I'm going to get this done before anyone from the association or church can stand in my way. Oh, well, how kind of you. Wait, are you talking about me? I'm the only one in the association now, you know? Oh, how strange. Or maybe that's lucky for me to think I'd run into one of my targets while out here on a walk like this. I guess that saves me some trouble, huh? I've got nothing to do with the association, I swear. I haven't done any serious work in a year or more. Please don't tell me you're here to kill me. We were like brothers in training, right? Please don't.
The woman was tearfully flailing her arms at this point. She had nothing to worry about, though. Bayo could see even from where he was peering through the fence that Toko had no real intent to kill anyone. She had a terrible habit of messing with people for her own entertainment. This time was no different. Unfortunately, the pleasure she took it in only made the target of her jokes feel doubly worse.
Huh. At least say we're like sisters. Eh? But Toko, you don't feel like a sister at all. I'd never dare to call you myself a big sister. True enough. You don't have the skills to claim to be my senior to begin with. If I had to describe what you're good at, it's even worse than those dumb late night infomercial products these days. Have you thought about a career change? I can refer you to a good place. There's this old and nearly bankrupt circus in Italy that's hiring. I have enough per diem work. Thank you very much. Find me something with at least a weekly salary. Wow, you aren't even denying that you're worse than a mail-order DoorDad. Why would I? You're totally right. I'm completely useless. That's me, the Mage Association's most worthless piece of baggage.
Maybe she was taken aback by Ritsuka's guileless smile, but Toko couldn't help but grin back at her. If one didn't know better, they would seem like good friends.
I guess that clears up any suspicion you might have had about me. And if that's the case, do you want to come in for a bit? I have some things I need to get done, but I could do them later. It's been such a long time, I'd like to catch up. You're easygoing as ever. You're right, you've convinced me. You clearly don't have anything going on with the association, and you're upholding your own principles. So you're really on Aoko's side, huh? Of course. She's still learning the ropes. I just want to watch over her from a distance. Nothing more, nothing less. That's fine with then. She's lucky to have someone like you that understands her.
Toko took a step back away from Ritsuka. She looked a bit regretful as she signaled that the conversation was over.
Oh? You're not coming inside? I pour a pretty good cup of coffee nowadays. Thanks, but I'll have to pass. I'm still laying low and I still have a lot to do before I take over this town. I shouldn't relax too much just yet. Oh, well, aren't we the hard worker? But you've always been like that. You always were one to focus on the process more than the goal. I have no idea what kind of preparations you're up to, but I feel sorry for whoever it is you're going after. Eh? It's just the usual. We'll have the mage scrap battle, the victor will take the other's crest, and that'll be it. I'm not an old-fashioned witch. I'm just going to put a curse on whoever I defeat in battle, you know. That's...
I'm just gonna go back. They have way too similar of a voice, and it is hurting. Ugh. That's exactly what I'm talking about, though. You're more interested in collecting their crest than their life. Young lady, why are we biting? Young lady, why are we biting? I just feel sorry for them if that became their sole purpose in life. You might think you're going easy on them, but that's like living under constant torture. Toko nodded to show her agreement. Her collection of crests would appear that way on the outside. Toko sought profit in combat. If a mage she defeated could provide her with profitable materials, she would not take their life. She would even save their life if she knew it would be for her advantage to do so. As a result, her workshop in London had a facility specifically built for the comfort of her magical suppliers. It housed mages who had either lost to her in battle or who had willingly agreed to contribute to her cause. Toko held many magecraft patents, which earned her up to £10,000 a month in royalties. However, the majority of this money went to the upkeep of the facility. The demands from the residents of that place for additional facilities and special privileges increased with every passing day. It was reaching a point where Toko needed to decide whether to incorporate or just let everyone go and be done with it.
I promise, nothing nefarious or evil like a dungeon. Torture is too much work anyways. Actually costs less to just entertain them. There's so many good stories out there these days. I could just steal the plot of something and recreate it to make everyone happy. Real or fake, everyone wants to be the hero of their own story.
Just out of curiosity, what's the ratio of the genres you use? 30% romance, 30% action, 30% suspense, 10% cartoons?
Huh? Basically only horror, actually. Horror films have every element you could ever want.
You know, that was always a part of you that scared me the most. You're a girl, you should be more into romance instead of that kind of stuff. That's sexist.
I guess it's something I should consider, and one of my potential targets says so as much. Let's see, how does 80% horror sound for the balance of virtual worlds I throw my prisoners into?
90% romance, come on, please. If not romance, do 90% mystery. This was clearly a response from someone who knew she'd lose if she had to go up against Toko.
Very well. If that situation should ever arise, I'll try to accommodate you.
Yes. Wait, what situation?
It's fine if you're friends with you-know-who, but I'm talking about if you ever become my enemy. Also, if you tell anyone about our conversation today, I'll snap you up from below before you can even blink.
Huh? From below? Like, out of my shadow? But more important than that, Toko, I can't move an inch!
Sorry, Ritsuka. I actually spent a week setting a trap in your place. I made a familiar out of a shadow and put it in your doorway. It's going to be living in your shadow for a while, so try not to say anything to inconvenience me. Heart.
You mean I've been in a pickle all along? Toko, you devil, you brute, you devil brute. You need to learn some common sense. I knew I heard something the other night. I just thought it was a thief trying to pick my lock. Ritsuka hadn't noticed the shadow familiar, but she had sensed Toko as she was setting her trap late at night. Toko didn't think Ritsuka could speak about common sense since she had ignored an apparent burglar trying to break into her home for a week.
Don't worry, this familiar will disintegrate at the beginning of the new year. See you around, Ritsuka. Hopefully we'll meet again. I'll take you up on that coffee of yours then, for sure. Also, I didn't mean to insult you by comparing you to an infomercial product. You live a simple life, I like that.
Toko winked at her old friend and left the apartment behind her. Hopefully we'll meet again. Toko realized those were empty words. Her plan would not spare her mortal body, but be it a success or be it a failure, Toko Aozaki would be erased from this world. Still, that was no reason to not at least say something about meeting again. Perhaps Toko had more affection for Ritsuka than she realized. Even so, she left that friend behind in a state of paralysis. Toko had indeed returned home. The fact alone revealed much to Ritsuka. 2 years older than Toko, Ritsuka had been contracted 10 years prior to monitor Toko's grandfather, the mage who discovered the fifth magic. They made her both Toko and Naoko senior. She knew the sisters rather well. She's going to keep a few of us from talking then. First people to be on alert upon seeing Toko would be myself and one other person. Another with more seniority than the Aozaki sisters in the truest sense. There was one other beautiful person who had taught Toko. I'm sure she's probably got it handled, though. She's not one to overlook something like that. Toko really should learn to be colder towards her enemies, though. She's too soft on them, thinks too much of their human rights. I don't know how I feel about her showing her face to a person she decided to kill. Toko was a researcher more than she was a mage. Generally, she wasn't a fighter. She was cruel, but not cold. Despite her capability for vicious, ruthless treatment of people, she also displayed a measure of compassion for others. Ritsuka sighed as if the problem were her own, and hoped that inconsistency would end up hurting Toko. Toko left the neighborhood and began heading towards the largest park in the town. It was 3 in the afternoon on this early winter day on the boulevard. If it were autumn, the street would be lined with people out for a walk to look at the colorful trees, but now Toko was alone. Though, to be accurate, she wasn't quite alone. Bea was walking along the grass more than 10 yards behind his employer when he noticed a change in her scent. Are you really not wearing your glasses out here, Toko? Toko's personality changed significantly depending on whether or not she was wearing her glasses. Bea wasn't sure which side of her was her true self, but he did know that she was much more serious and cruel without her glasses. It wasn't quite to the level of split personality, more like a reordering of priorities. She mainly took off her glasses when she was about to fight someone. Doing so made her less human. It pushed all sense of compromise and concern and sympathy out of her brain. That must mean the scent is getting closer of her enemy, I think. Bale furrowed her brow as he hid behind a tree. He could certainly smell hostility and anticipation emanating from Toko, but at the same time he couldn't help but scrunch his nose up at the strange scent that kept getting stronger. Hello. I just happened to be out here for a walk. What a coincidence meeting you here, Toko.
Ah, yes, what a coincidence indeed. We're not the sort of to stop and chat, so let's just keep this formality, shall we?
Beo had no idea who was talking to Toko. The priest! His name was Eri Fumitsuka. The fact it's a D is throwing me off. He was a priest at the Aida Church, and an enemy to Beo and Toko. However, it was impossible for Beo to sense this. He had no personal hostility towards the clergy anyway. As far as Beo could tell, he was just a regular person who... There was no chance that Toko could be at a disadvantage here. He would later learn a harsh lesson from someone who seemed similarly harmless, but that was a tale for another time.
So, how are things going with you? God's house must be full of hard workers. Any greedy trolls show up hungry for concessions?
I can agree on the hard work part, but greed is not a problem in our organization. Any who come to us usually do so on the basis of doctrine, nothing more. Don't people driven by duty rather than greed frighten you more?
I thought I said we weren't going to waste time on small talk. Just cut to the chase. Is your follower going to sound the bell or not?
My, you're one to talk. You're very nearly a workaholic yourself, Toko. You mean to tell me you don't even have time for a little conversation? After all, this might be the last time we ever see each other again.
Please, this is the last time and you know it.
Toko curtly rejected the smiling face request for a chat. She was being as blunt as she could.
If we were to ever meet again, I'm certain it would be in a fight to the death. We both know each other's intention. One of us would be dead the moment we laid eyes on the other. There's no time for idle chit-chat.
That's what happens when you think, Toko. Why is it that you people can only think of eradicating whoever stands in their way? Eri shrugged his shoulder in frustration. Toko kept her gaze fixed intently on his overcoat. No matter how many times he said he wanted to resolve this peacefully, she would bet her pride that he didn't mean it. See, this is what happens when one goes out, experiences the world, and returns to their home. I would have liked it if you had worked on your personal charm instead. Oh, come on, don't glare at me like that. I'm getting to the point. I am entrusted with all reports to the church. My report is now. The second owner is currently battling a heretic. I am monitoring them under my clerical authority, in accordance with the Neutrality Pact. The affiliation of the heretic is unknown, and I am investigating their history.
So you're telling me that the church is still unaware of the affiliation of the mage who appeared in town?
Right. Sister Yuika reports to a different jurisdiction from my own, but she has not even seen the heretic, let alone uncover their workshop. There will most likely be no interference from the church until she is able to reveal who our enemy is. Perhaps they are thinking of a small turf war between mages who've just come into town.
I see. So we do have a deal. As long as you're the only one who knows that I'm back in town, I'll lay low. I also won't get in contact with any of my blood relatives.
Very well. I know you're not the type to sabotage things indiscriminately, and that you prefer to do things as efficiently as possible. You might get carried away and try to make your secret hideout in some factory or office building somewhere, right? I won't allow the bloodshed in this parish to continue on my watch, or anything else that might sully my reputation. Toko had to resist the urge to object and ask just what kind of person he thought she was. She did hate wastefulness, but she wasn't about to entirely abandon society and its norms just for the sake of doing things optimally. Besides, criminal activities were always a pain to clean up later, thus far more inefficient.
I guess that's fine. We're both coming out ahead here. Just keep watching till things are settled.
Oh, are you leaving so soon? I haven't had the chance to fully appreciate what you look like now.
I feel the opposite. I hope this is the last time I ever have to lay eyes on you again.
Ah, wait. Before you go, let me ask you one thing. Eri spoke just as Toko was about to take a step back. He had effortlessly stopped her from leaving. This is the last thing I'll say. You look quite uneasy, Toko. Are you feeling stifled here?
I couldn't be further from the truth. I'm feeling more fulfilled than ever. Why do you ask, Gary?
You look as though... You look like you're having fun, but also like you're not truly happy. I was just worried because it seems you just don't even realize it yourself.
I remember you used to say that everyone finds happiness in different things. But you don't know me, so don't pretend to know what makes me happy.
Well, of course, I don't know down to the fine details. Women in particular have a notoriously bizarre concept of happiness. But happiness can easily be categorized into two major types. Seems you haven't figured that out yet, and it's hard to watch.
Oh, I'm greatly obliged for the concern. But insist on paying senior apprentice, eh? Fine, I'll listen. Let's see what you have to say.
If it happened to be something worthless, she would kill him. If it erased all the progress she had made on our plans over the past month, or even the last 2 years, she would kill him. Toko's hostility was clearly turned to murderous rage. It's quite obvious, really. The two types of happiness are relative and absolute. It depends on whether you compare yourself to others or not. You're either happy because you yourself are at peace, or you're the type of person who can't stand it if you have less than someone else, even if you're otherwise fulfilled. The definition of happiness basically comes down to that. I know it goes without me saying, but most people want to be happier than those around them. The holy man smiled calmly, wrapped in the shadowy black clothing. Toko remembered clearly now. This was a man who actually didn't believe in the concept of true happiness. Come now, calm yourself. If you try anything, Sister Yuika will be here in a flash. I know that your idea of happiness is not relative. You are always the type to be satisfied as long as you stay true to yourself. The only Aozaki I know who has a relative definition of happiness is He stopped himself before he could say Aoko. The priest seemed to have spoken out of genuine concern for Toko, but his words had the opposite effect on her. Although he was reluctant to part on such ill terms, Eri knew it was best not to anger Toko any further.
I've said too much. Please forgive me, Puppet Master.
I'll take my leave now. I pray that you will see a good outcome in your endeavors.
Good. Get lost, you gloomy... Your gloomy act isn't helping my mood. What's up with your outfit anyways? Doesn't wearing that cloak around town make people avoid you?
Everyone is pretty much used to it by now. Besides, how else can I carry a weapon without people noticing? I'm sure it was glaringly obvious to you, but I have about 3 on me right now. Harry turned and walked back in the direction he came from with a smile still on his face.
What a joke. I only saw 1, and it was just a small dagger. How would he hide 3 anyway? He's not even a mage. Is he some kind of street magician now or something?
Toko muttered to herself as she thought back over the man who had stood before her just moments ago. She truly hated the fact that he had the upper hand on her, but she also felt a bit relieved. If she had actually noticed how heavily armed he was during that brief conversation, it would have been enough to instantly set off a fight. Toko wasn't sure which one of them would have come out the victor if that had happened. Eri Fumitsuka had been that kind of man for as long as she had known him. He didn't need a reason or even an opponent to fight, nor did he need any kind of connection or hatred. He was just a machine that simply needed an ignition. He was murder incarnate, and with no qualms about cutting someone down. Toko had only seen that side of him once occur. It was back when she was still a relatively happy disciple of magecraft. Toko had been standing quietly before her grandfather, crying. The instant her first tears fell, without warning, without hesitation, Eri cut down their master in an instant.
What have you done? Why did you just kill him like that?
Because I thought I could. Eri could not fathom how much this curt response would affect such a young Toko. He had not meant to say, my opponent showed a moment of weakness, and I knew I could win, so I took the opportunity. All he meant was, I felt capable of killing him, so I did. This man had become her grandfather's disciple, forged an unrivaled friendship with him, and yet had still mercilessly cut him down when the desire rose.
Okay, that's a thing.
He possessed some sort of superhuman ability that had allowed him to destroy the mortal vessel of a mage who had been infinitely close to being a magician.
This is all so fishy and a pain. I'll have to kill him since he annoys me, but that's just one more thing to do after stealing the magic. Damn it, Eri.
Toko put her glasses back on and turned on her heel. She had completed all of her major tasks for the day. All that was left was to make some money to buy food for her familiar and head back to the hideout.
Wait, what was it without a sudden romantic mood?
Setting aside Bao's mental shout out of dismay for a moment, the scent that had been bothering him for the past few days had suddenly disappeared. His employer was back to being the old Toko Aozaki he knew, and she was headed to the entertainment district. Bao sniffed at the air. The scent had vanished, and he no longer had a reason to continue tailing Toko. But where had it gone, and where had it come from in the first place? Bao thought about it for a few moments. It must be that shady guy just earlier. Bao regained his composure and decided to follow the trail of the man's scent. He had no idea that where he was going was his employer's worst nightmare. Ruh-roh! Ida Church was set up to accept visitors at any time of day, any day of the year. The church was the savior of the lost and the poor, and recently had even ventured into a wedding industry for some extra income. It was closely involved with the public welfare of Misaki City and was doing fairly well for itself in that regard. However, there was one problem.
Father Eri is still not in.
Ritsuka is boycotting the church, and we are losing volunteers with each passing day. I'm the only one working here at this point. Even if their financial situation was stable, they seem to be chronically understaffed. The people of this city lack faith. What sort of life is spent demanding money in exchange for labor? Days spent chasing after material desires can only lead to a life of hollow wealth and mental poverty.
The nun muttered to herself quietly as she picked up a stepladder with one hand. Although it was a proper stepladder used for cleaning the church windows and weighed too much to be carried by even two strong adults, the mass didn't seem to face her.
The desolation of the hearts and minds of our flock is a concern, but we also mustn't forget that increasing costs of living. There are whispers of an impending sales tax, and Father Erie must be convinced of a great result we can achieve in a single day if we hold more wedding ceremonies. He'll go out of his way to help anyone and everyone, but won't think about the work that comes after that. What is he going to do about all those stray cats in the back garden? All right. That and any other physical labor always falls on me, doesn't it?
The nun, mumbling to herself at a near constant pace, was Sister Yuika Suse. There was a reason for her unusual behavior. Yuika was completely blind and had honed her other senses to keenly perceive her surroundings. She was extremely sensitive to the presence of a living creature, particularly human, and could detect when someone was within a radius of 30 feet. She could talk to herself so openly now because she did not sense anyone nearby.
Let's see. What leftover food do we have? Ah, there's that set of assorted jams we receive as a gift. What shall we do, my lord? Can a cat eat 2-a-day bread? Can a cat eat 2-day-old bread that's a rock hard? Ritsuka was clear about not giving them onions, if I remember correctly.
Sister Yuika was busy putting the clearing tools while simultaneously trying to prepare dinner for the hungry animals mewing the back garden. When suddenly...
Oh? Do we have a new lost child among us?
Sister Yuika suddenly sensed the presence of a small dog in the church.
I'm sorry, little one, but today is for cats only. If I throw you in with that bunch, you'll be too surprised to eat. I'll give you some food, but you'll have to wait until next time to come inside. We can't be taking any more animals tonight.
She put her foot in front of the small brown dog to stop him from coming any further inside the church's gate. Yuika was somewhat rougher in her treatment of non-human creatures.
What is this irritating creature?
Bayo, who convinced himself to transform into a small dog instead of a wolf, like he really wanted, only saw Sister Yuika as an obstacle in his way. He could smell the scent of a man in black ahead, further inside. Bayo thought little of humans, and in this moment, Sister Yuika was simply an obstacle. So naturally, he ignored her warnings and attempted to push through the gate.
Huh? What is this color? The dog is a most unusual color. Perhaps it's a rare exotic breed, in which case...
he might be some wealthy person's pet. Since the dog came to the church, the rich owner might also attend church services. Yuika stopped trying to push the dog away from the gate.
I'm sorry. I'm sure you're here to see Father Erie. But he's still out at the moment. I'll give you the best food we have today if you just run along, okay? What an annoying, irritating woman. Perfect, nobody's around. I'll just go for her throat.
Bayo's front leg stopped suddenly before he could launch herself at Sister Yuika. Pop! Sister Yuika opened the lid of the bottle she held it and poured out a glimmering liquid into a small dish. She set it down in front of the dog.
Here you go. Eat up.
The mysterious unknown liquid sat in front of Bayo. It smelled like nothing he'd ever smelled before. Bayo was known to let curiosity get the best of him. Even if it was poison, no poison in the natural world could harm him. He lapped up a mouthful.
What?
He lapped up a little more.
Is this...
He lapped up even more.
flavor?
He lapped up more and more.
My, you're lapping up like it was milk. I think I might actually like you, even though you are a dog. I want more.
The church became filled with the echo of Bayo's boisterous barking. At this point, he'd completely forgotten about the man's scent.
Hehe. It's a sweet and delicious, isn't it? I'm impressed. I didn't know dogs could have such a sweet tooth. Sweet? Is that what sweet tastes like?
Bayo looked up at Sister Yuika as she whispered to him. He had the feeling that sweet was an important word he should remember. His food sent a sensation through him like a flash of lightning. Until this point, eating food had been nothing more than a process of refueling. He liked hamburgers, but that was never amounted to more than a preference for the particular mouthfeel. He only ate because he needed the nutrition. But this was different. This food was not necessary for his survival. And yet he knew he wanted more. He didn't really need it, but it made him feel good. It was like food for his soul rather than his body.
Wait, isn't the smell...
He stopped wagging his tail. The golden wolf in the form of a small dog sat with the food that was the very origin of his name in front of him. Beowulf was faced with a difficult problem he was unable to solve.
I'm home. Welcome back, Bayo. I was worried about you. It's late. As your trainer and master, I have to punish you for staying out so late without checking in with me. Kneel right there.
Bayo transformed back into human form and returned to the workshop. Toko was waiting there for him with a big, strange smile on her face.
Ah, right.
Bayo knew he had messed up. He had failed to get back home before Toko became his sister Yuika.
Do I really have to kneel in the corner? I was out late, but nobody saw me. I wasn't doing anything bad. Are you sure that nobody saw you? Were you out playing in the mountains? No, I was in town, but nobody noticed me. I'm sure of it. I was actually following you.
Toko froze at Bayo's completely unexpected response. But she was used to him by now. She just sighed and rubbed her head, now throbbing from a terrible headache.
Fine. I suppose I was the one who taught you that nothing bad is bad as long as you don't get caught. I also never explicitly told you that you couldn't follow me, so I'll let this one slide. But how did you avoid being noticed? I'm pretty sure you would have drawn attention to yourself in that form. That's my trade secret. If I told you, then I won't be able to see you like I did today. You looked like you were really having fun with that person.
Toko's response was both honest and out of character. Even Bayo was surprised at how taken aback she was by his statement.
That wasn't fun. I don't know what kind of weird idea you got from that, but it was a negotiation. I was simply holding the entire town hostage to keep him from interfering as a priest of the church and... Well, I was actually talking about that girl. The one you left unable to move. Woman and wolf stared at each other for a silent moment. Bayo looked satisfied with himself and the secret information. But I guess that means that guy is your mate, right?
Toko nearly choked at the utterly fearless question. The puppet master wordlessly removed her glasses and tamped down her emotions.
Tell me, Bayo, why did you even know that word? There's no reason for you to know about such things.
Why wouldn't I? It's a word all creatures are familiar with.
Granted, I never thought of you as a normal creature, so I'm a little surprised myself. Anyway, who is that plain potato-looking male anyway?
Bayo was suddenly irritated. He was irritated, but he couldn't figure out why.
He's literally nothing, to me anyway. Your assessment is correct. He isn't worth thinking about, and he's not even good enough for you to eat. Really? He's just an enemy? And I'm the only special person in your life? For the time being, yes. I thought I might rekindle something. But there was absolutely nothing there. I don't think I ever think about him like that again. Alright, then. If that's the case, then I'll forget about it. Say, what do you mean by rekindle anyways?
Those two used to date.
It's just when you think you can make a relationship like it was in the past. I mean, I guess there was a slight chance of that happening. He was my first love, after all. Huh?
Bayo had no first-hand experience with love, but he at least understood the concept of first love.
You had a first love? I'm not sure why you think a mate is more believable than a first love. It was a long time ago. I was still a teenager and he had just started studying under my grandfather. He wasn't studying magecraft. He was just training under him to hone his mind.
Toko spoke indifferently, and it was clear from the look on her face that there was no longer any attachment there. Yet there was still a tenderness in her words that caused Bayo to furrow his brow.
Miss Toko, do you still like him? No. I was surprised at how little I felt for him. There was just this remnant of my adolescence there. Just talking to people I know from that time takes me back, you know. I know I'm not attracted to him at all anymore as a person, but when I talk to him, I can remember that past version of myself so clearly it makes me want to laugh.
Bayo grew only more confused as Toko spoke with such passion. He couldn't wrap his head around the concept that she hated him, yet somehow also still liked him.
I don't get it. That's because you don't have likes or dislikes. Sometimes you can't use logic to understand human relationships. I do too have likes and dislikes. There are certain foods that I like more than others, you know? You only work on a standard of whether something is useful or not. Wild animals only use taste as a sensor to measure how nutritious something is. Only humans eat for reasons other than pure nutritional value. Some of those foods we like doesn't help us sustain us. We eat what we eat because we enjoy it. That's also why things we like look sweet. Things you like look sweet. I mean, that was just an example, but we don't look at something like we like and think it's better. Well, maybe some people do. I don't know. It all depends on what you're into, I guess. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is something sweet because we like it, or do we like it because it's sweet? Yeah, but I don't think you look sweet. Of course not. You're not actually alive. You exist, but you're not really alive. There's a difference. It's kind of ironic, actually. If you were to ever figure that difference out, you wouldn't be invincible anymore. Anyway, it's time for dinner, and I want a lot today, so I bought some nice marbled beef for you.
Toko walked into the classroom back to her usual mood. Bayo lingered in the hallway, looking dejected. You're not actually alive. Those words pierced right through Bayo's heart, and he didn't quite know why yet. 3 weeks would pass before he got a hint of why that was the case. Lou Beowulf was perfect. And yet he would lose, at the hands of a particularly imperfect creature. The sound of the phone ringing echoed through the empty halls of the school. It was January, and both the mage who remodeled the building and the magician who had expelled her from it were long gone. The telephone that Toko had installed on a whim rang and rang without letting up, as if it knew for sure that someone was there to answer it.
Shut up.
Something rustled inside. There was definitely no people inside of the school building, but there was one non-human creature sleeping there.
Hi, you've reached the Misaki branch of the Hall Shrine. The owner has run away with her tail between her legs and is currently unavailable, so please leave a message after the... Ah, Miss Toko. Ah, yes, that's fine. Have a good trip. Don't worry about me.
The classroom was occupied by a young boy with blonde hair. Even before the phone rang, he was in his human form. It used to be that when he was alone, he would always doze off in his wolf form, but not anymore. There was no real need for him to stay in his human form, but he did anyway. It was now his normal state of being when he was not in combat.
Just call me when you need anything. I know my contract is up, but I'm still your familiar.
No, I'm not being sarcastic. I'm proud to be your familiar. Until I find a better employer, I'm leaving my collar with you. Bayo couldn't help but wonder where Toko was traveling. She had accepted her loss and ended her contract with her familiar. She said it was because she hadn't fulfilled her promise to let him fight magic. However, that was actually the fault of her familiar, and not her responsibility at all. Bayo had not fulfilled his duty as her bodyguard yet.
So, where are you now?
It was the name of a country he wasn't familiar with. After the battle, she had promptly left Japan to develop a way to break the curse.
What do you mean, accept your loss?
Does that mean you haven't given up yet? Toko laughed on the other end of the line. Somehow Bayo sensed a tropical scent coming through the phone. Whether that was a mystical effect of Toko's handcrafted phone, or the werewolf's super senses was unclear.
Well, come home soon, okay? I'll be here waiting. Bring me back something delicious, will you?
Toko asked him why. If he had really decided to stay on as her familiar, there was no reason for him to stay there.
I don't really know myself, actually.
As he stumbled over his words, Bayo patted his chest a few times and remembered the pain he had felt.
How do I put this? It's like, when I'm here, I think I can understand what sweet really means.
The wolf, who had learned to accept being wasteful, expressed his future goal, a vague hint of delight in his voice. Thus concluded an exceptionally rare case of first love, sweet as honey. Alright, well, that is the end of this game. We're going to be moving on to Tsukuhime. But next week I've got Kingdom Service, so I'm working next Sunday. And then I'm going to probably do a ranking stream where we're going to discuss a few things. So we're going to take a few minutes, or a few weeks. So next week we are going to mainly just have Nep Nep, that pain in the ass. 2 o'clock Central Time. Yes, sweetie. Hi. So, make sure to come join us. And have a good day.